Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and welcome to our quick session, How to Communicate the Value of Branding to Your Board, where we'll define brand work and its connection to mission success to help you tangibly convey its importance to your leadership. My name is Gardiner Rhoderick. I'm the creative director here at Mighty Citizen. We're a branding and digital transformation agency based in Austin, Texas, and Washington, D.C. I've been working in brand, marketing, and digital for the past 18 years and consulted with a wide range of clients, including the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, Whole Kids, a philanthropic arm of Whole Foods, and the University of Texas System, the second largest university system in the country. Their board is responsible for managing the University of Texas brand across a network of 14 academic and medical institutions. Mighty Citizen works exclusively with mission-driven organizations like these, and we help them meet their goals through a variety of services, including research, brand strategy, user experience, marketing, and complete in-house website development. We've been doing this for roughly 20 years and have guided many boards through refining or otherwise reinvigorating their brands. So where do we typically start? Well, let's cover the circumstances that are usually in place that affect brand work for most organizations. At some point in an organization's life, they will struggle with low engagement, low sales, low adoption, low something, whether just starting out or after 100 years in business. And a common strategy to tackle this problem is to assess and refine the organization's brand. Problem is, there are 1,000 ways of accomplishing this, and very few require a complete rebrand. So to decide which path to take and how to navigate it successfully, it's imperative that we understand what a brand is in order to strategically influence it. So here's the common scenario, and probably our first hurdle. Many universal misconceptions exist about what a brand is and what it can solve. And often the word doesn't have a shared definition across the organization. And the concept is understood in a vague way. So the word is thrown around in extremes, either as a scapegoat for the variety of business problems you might be having, or the only solution to all those business problems. And it's no surprise, there's no lack of opposing think pieces on the topic. You know, your brand is just your visual look and feel, or it's your brand promise you make to your members, or it's a tagline, et cetera, all these things. And while these are aspects of branding, they aren't the right definition, which we'll get to. But given these misconceptions, you then have to watch out for a compounding problem. And that is this idea that leadership may have embraced or otherwise been exposed to these misconceptions as well. And you're kind of working with them under this false premise. So if you're in charge of managing your association's brand, you know that just uttering the word rebrand can send walls up at the organization. And this is because of those misconceptions. A lot of branding work has been done in a frivolous and sort of uninformed way, which leads to bad experiences, bad results, tepid results. And board members are going to bring those with them. And it's our job to recalibrate their understanding. So we want to set a branding baseline in our organizations. And so let's be clear about one thing. Routinely assessing your brand is a healthy and critical business activity. If you're not doing it now, you need to start. Talking to and surveying your members about how your association meets their expectations should be a routine data collection exercise for you. The insights you collect from this exercise will form the foundation of rationale that you need to dispel any biased assumptions that are emerging in the association that are having one-way conversations with their members. Internally, a one-sided flow of information is commonly what creates this false sense of confidence in brand performance across the organization, including the board. So to combat this, you want to routinely take your audience's temperature so that you can be equipped to quickly solve branding problems in the future. So how do we get our board to want to do that? Well, marketers need to educate in order to constructively collaborate. It's our jobs to define not just what branding means to our colleagues, but to define what value means to our organization. So the two are intertwined, brand and value. And they can only be agreed upon when your organization has consensus around its strategic goals. And that means getting leadership to agree on those goals and their links to member value, and consequently their links to branding efforts. So that all sounds great. That still doesn't quite sound like the reason to care about branding, right? Well, a board who's disconnected from the intricacies of branding work, they can't effectively manage or otherwise guide an organization and contribute to its strategic growth. So why should the board care? Well, there's plenty of reasons. To inform critical marketing decisions. Very simply put, 20 years ago, in the late 1900s, marketing issues rarely made it as a board agenda item. But today, brand conversations are very public. And today's viral marketing environment means situations and questions about reputation can quickly get elevated to boardroom relevance. Another reason is to simply have consensus on your primary value propositions. Brand and value, again, are intertwined. Everyone at an association, most importantly leadership, should agree on what the organization's value is and also be able to identify it at the drop of a hat. To do that, you need to keep a pulse on the relationship with your audience. Your board should know why you may be experiencing a downward trend in acquisition, or how a new piece of technology can affect your ability to serve members, etc. This next one is my favorite. You want to make your board members reliable brand ambassadors. Your leaders are often accomplished and respected individuals. They're usually stalwarts of the community. This is low-hanging fruit. These members can be your brand gold for your organization if you get them on brand. Finally, boards need the ability to foster a culture of organization-wide commitment. So again, they're leaders, they're seen as such. If staff see adoption coming from the top, branding consistency will be easier to adopt and organizational efficiency will follow. So that all sounds great. There's a lot there. And the good news is convincing your board about brand value is going to be easier than you think because of one key difference. And that is that association boards are just different. So typical corporate boards are responsible for the bottom line and a very clear directive of increasing profitability. Their quorums represent a range of drastically different industries, people with very different experiential backgrounds. But conversely, association boards usually share more common ground. They're made up of professionals who are closely tied to the mission. They're filled with personal ties, and they're often volunteers themselves. This gets them closer to understanding the role of branding. While their responsibilities still cover guiding the health of the organization, they have another psychological stake in the game. They have a vested and arguably passionate interest in the perception of the trade or industry that the association supports. The association they steward is responsible for making good on a promise about the profession they represent. This in turn affects how they perceive themselves and how their profession is defined. So as individuals who are emotionally tied to the organization, they are primed to see value through that lens. And this brings us to 4 methods to convey value of branding to your board. The first one is going to sound really familiar. Educate them on the difference between brand and branding. As marketers, we know assessing the brand is, again, a very healthy business practice, but there are 1,000 ways to do it. So we need to be able to strategically influence it. So we need to know what a brand is and what a brand isn't. So what a brand isn't, let's distinguish between the two. It's not a logo. A logo is just a graphic symbol. It's not a tagline or a tweet. These are simply methods for communicating or reaching out to your audience in real time. It's not a marketing strategy or communications plan. It's not a brand promise or a credo or a value prop. These are just kind of words on a page. What these all are tools that can help you influence your brand. So what is a brand? It's very, very simple. A brand is your organization's reputation as it exists, as it is created in the hearts and minds of your audience. That means that brands are intangible. They are literally something we cannot touch or control. A brand is the audience's gut feeling about a company, service, or a product. And that gut feeling is created as an outcome of all the interactions they have with an association's actions, good or bad. And they are constantly being challenged and influenced. So just think about it. They're receiving input from thousands of channels a day, reacting to changes in culture, the economy, their surroundings, their friends, their own personal histories. So you could have technically hundreds of brands, one for every member of your association. And these interactions create a cycle with a direct connection and repercussion to organizational success. Members will set their perceptions by the way in which you meet their expectations. Our job is to corral these impressions and influence them during this cycle of experience. And we want to point them toward our organizational goals. We have many channels of communication available to us today, owned media, shared media, paid or otherwise, and using these, this constant stream of on-demand interaction is where the act of branding occurs. So branding is the work of simply influencing the brand. As communicators, this is where we can exert control and deploy strategy to change perception and build value in our audience. If it's done well, branding ultimately helps people invest their financial resources, but more importantly, their emotional trust. Okay, so your board now has a shared and concrete understanding distinguishing brand from the work of branding. What's next? Well, by now it might be obvious, but the majority of work involved in measuring the temperature of the brand, assessing its strengths, promoting its value, falls to the marketing team. By extension, exposure to your work at the board level ensures that a common understanding of the current state of the brand is understood. So we want to make marketing updates a priority at board meetings. We want to connect the board to your audience. To continue monitoring your brand, you need to be where your audience is, and so does your board. Keep them informed about where marketing is headed. It's moving fast. Having an understanding of emerging channels gives context for whether you need to diversify, how you're gaining insight about where new, maybe deeper engagement may be happening, and can provide you with rationale for where to invest next. You also want to take the opportunity to bring data to the table with context. We want to take advantage of qualitative research, so surveys, keeping an eye on your net promoter score, your event feedback, member retention rates, etc. But we also don't want to overwhelm the board with charts and graphs. Again, it's our responsibility to make clear connections between the marketing, the organizational performance, and changes in perception. We just want the board to understand that there's rationale behind our actions. So the third piece is, and we touched on this earlier about how brands are different, is to bring branding experience into the board's composition. A board's primary function remains the same, whether they're corporate or association-based. You want to bring guidance when facing tough organizational challenges. By bringing branding experience into the composition of the board, it will make consensus easier to reach. So we want you to tap into the power of a well-selected board. Assess the experience you currently have on the board. Make sure a strong marketing or branding background is among them. Doing so will introduce expertise that is shared and adopted at the board level. You want someone advocating for the why of your work among this group. It will also then create a collaborative connection between yourself and the executive marketing staff and the board. You want the board to become eager to contribute to task forces or larger initiatives that will require a lot of buy-in. So the real goal here in inviting the board into your world to begin with is to expedite that consensus building when you're going to need quick decisions. So the last piece here is to only rebrand when unbiased research calls for it. And what I mean by this, we say something here at Mighty Citizen all the time, and that is that research kills opinions. So like I said earlier, nothing will elicit a board-wide groan like the idea of doing a brand overhaul. The ramifications are wide and deep, and they're expensive. So we want to establish value of brand work by taking it seriously and understanding the gravity of undertaking rebranding work. Doing so is going to position you to be seen with credibility about what moves should be made next. And a first kind of foray into this is to understand that rebrands are a solution to a very specific and short list of problems. We're talking about complete rebranding exercises here. So the first one is a change in mission. So your association is changing its mission. Your core service will no longer align with your legacy messaging and visual identity. Very easy candidate and rationale for needing to reassess your brand and possibly rebrand. The next is merger of organizations. So you are effectively becoming a new organization with hopefully an improved value proposition. Is the new value fundamentally woven into your current content, your archive of content? Is it emoted in your visual identity? Again, another good candidate for rebranding. The last one is something that we don't ever hope, we hope never to be in this situation, but is organizational crisis or scandal. No one wants this to happen. But any major dent to public perception, again, remember, that is your brand, is going to color any future work of the mission. Some examples are the Lance Armstrong and the Livestrong Foundation, or even right now, something as private as the Bill and Melinda Gates divorce and its repercussions on the Gates Foundation. We'll see over time how that plays out. It's currently facing a lot of scrutiny, but how their branding takes stock and how they meet expectations is going to dictate its success. So regardless of where you find yourselves today, whether your content strategy might need a rethink or your existing logo or visual identity needs a refresh, overall, just resist the urge to act on your gut intuition alone. You want to use unbiased research when you're considering and strategizing any branding projects. Instead, use your intuition as a hypothesis and test, test, test. Qualitative research is your friend. We want to research your audiences and your market and your competition using interviews, surveys, focus groups, usability studies, anything that will give you the emotional pulse between your membership and your organization. You want to make use of quantitative research. So all manner of analytics. Start tracking anything you can. Email opens, conversions, website visits, event attendance, direct mail responses, anything that's valuable in pinpointing new opportunities and identifying where strategy might be missing the mark. And again, we want to always share this research as a stream with the board. It's critical that they see unbiased research. Remember, we want to always avoid leaning exclusively on our most active supporters or our most vocal detractors. It's the unheard voice that is more than likely your majority, and you need to exert the effort to reach out to them and listen. Now, one common method to ensure unbiased research is to partner with an outside agency who is divested from the success of your organization. This is what can provide a really clear, true gauge of the state of your brand. So the takeaway here is that managing brand expectations for associations requires deep insights about membership that cross generational, professional, and cultural demographics. We want to use these 4 methods to educate your board and create a savviness for this dynamic and always changing world of brand work. So we want to maintain a durable brand by constantly listening, watching, reacting to the needs of your audience and including your board. Making effective decisions about organizational strategy requires understanding these insights broadly across the organization. Your effectiveness in introducing and deploying foundational brand work and consequently member value requires a symbiotic relationship with your board. And just like with any personal relationship, we can't always ask without giving. In this scenario, keep sustaining trust from your board, with your board, by keeping them informed and educated about how branding and brand perception is connected to member value. The result should be a constructive and operational conversation about where to move the needle next time a brand decision is called for. So again, just to recap, here's our 4 methods to convey branding value to boards. We want to preach the difference between brand and branding all the time, whenever you can, to anyone who will listen. We want to make marketing updates a priority at board meetings. We want to add branding experience to the composition of your board, and only start a rebrand conversation when research calls for it. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this quick primer on branding in your board. We thought it would be good to have a follow-up Ask Me Anything style discussion, since this was pretty brief, to let you hear firsthand from an association who recently went through a rebrand. So join us next month on June 10th, where Michelle Stickle, who's the Director of Marketing and Strategic Projects at the National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners, and myself answer questions related to their recent rebrand and how she triumphed over the upheaval of the 2020 calendar year. Please visit mightycitizen.com/branding to get more information, how to register, and also download some resources that are related to branding in this topic. Otherwise, I really hope you've enjoyed this little session, and we hope it provides a lot of value to you and your teams. And remember, always preach the difference between brand and branding. Thank you very much, and have a good day.